When I asked about my son's clinic grand opening, the one I had invested $340,000 into, his wife didn't greet me. She didn't ask how I was. She just said one sentence. "Did you get the invoice I forwarded?" Not hello, not even my name, just business. I stood there for a moment, holding my phone, trying to understand how I had become a transaction. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I am 71 years old, a retired mathematics teacher, a widow, and a mother who gave her son everything, including the savings her husband and she had spent a lifetime building. "I got it," I replied quietly. "Good," she said. "The supplier needs payment by Friday." Then she hung up. Before I could ask the only question that mattered, "When is the grand opening?" I stood in my kitchen in Oakville looking out at the backyard I had spent 30 years caring for. The maple tree had turned deep red. My husband Michael used to love that. He's been gone 4 years now, and sometimes I still turn to tell him things. That afternoon I almost did, because something didn't feel right, not in the numbers. In the silence, my son Trevor had been building that clinic for 2 years. Cedarbrook Wellness, his dream and mine. I had invested $340,000 into it, not as a loan, as belief, as trust. As a mother who didn't ask for her name on the building, only a place in her son's life. At first, he included me, weekly calls, photos, updates, excitement. "Mom, what do you think of this? Mom, this is going to change everything." Those were good months. Then something changed, not suddenly, quietly. His wife Renata took over the finances, and slowly I disappeared from the conversation. Calls became shorter, then occasional, then gone, replaced by something else. Invoices, forwarded emails. Cold communication that didn't feel like family. I told myself it was normal. They're busy. It's a big project. Don't be difficult. Because I had read enough to know parents who hold on too tightly become a burden. But there is a difference between letting go and being quietly removed. And I was only beginning to understand which one was happening to me. That Friday, I did something I hadn't done in months. I drove to the clinic 40 minutes. The entire way, I told myself I was overthinking until I got there and stopped. There were plants in the window, artwork on the walls, a sign above the door, Cedarbrook Wellness and Rehabilitation, and inside people. A receptionist. Patients waiting, clipboards. The clinic was open, not preparing, operating. I didn't go inside, I just stood there, trying to do something simple. Understand, because this wasn't new, this had been running for weeks. And I had not been told. I went home. That evening I called my son, no answer. I called again, voicemail, my own son sending me to voicemail. I sat with that feeling for a full day, then I called her again. This time she answered immediately. "When did the clinic open?" I asked. A pause, small but enough. "We had a soft opening about 6 weeks ago," she said. 6 weeks, I wasn't invited. "Trevor wanted to keep it low pressure," she added. Low pressure, I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see me, because I knew something she didn't. I had spent my entire life protecting that boy from pressure, and never once had my presence been a burden, until now. "I put $340,000 into that clinic," I said calmly. "We're very grateful," she replied. Grateful, that word again. Careful, polite, empty. "Trevor will call you," she added. He didn't. And that's when something inside me changed. Not loudly, not emotionally, but precisely. Because I am not a woman who reacts without thinking. I am a woman who pays attention. And for the first time, I started looking not as a mother, but as someone who wanted the truth. And when I laid everything out on my table, every invoice, every transfer, every message, I began to see something. A pattern, something small at first, then clearer, then impossible to ignore. Because numbers don't lie, people do. And the numbers were telling me a story no one had intended for me to read. A story about money, about control, and about something that had been quietly happening behind my back. Something I was never meant to question, until I did. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I didn't call them back, not yet. Because once you realize something is wrong, the worst thing you can do is react too early. You observe first. That night I cleared my dining table, not for dinner, for documents, every transfer, every invoice, every email Trevor had ever sent me about the clinic. 31 years of teaching mathematics had taught me one thing very clearly. If something doesn't make sense, you don't argue, you calculate. I laid everything out in order: dates, amounts, notes. At first, it looked normal: equipment, renovations, salaries. Then I saw it: a small line item. Consulting fee, nothing unusual. Businesses hire consultants all the time. But then I saw it again and again. Same description, different dates, regular intervals, monthly. My fingers paused on the paper because patterns mean intention. I went back through older invoices. There it was, month after month. The amounts weren't huge individually: 2,000, 3,000, sometimes more, but together they told a different story. Over time, it added up. A lot. I leaned back slowly, because this wasn't a mistake. This was structure, and structure means planning. I picked up my phone and searched the company name listed beside the payments. A numbered company, no clear description, no obvious purpose. That was my first real answer, and my first real question. The next morning, I called someone I trusted: Margaret, an old friend, retired corporate lawyer, the kind of woman who doesn't react emotionally but sees things clearly. We met for lunch. I placed the documents in front of her. She didn't speak for a long time. She just read, carefully, slowly. Then she looked up at me and asked one question. "Do you know who owns this company?" I didn't. She nodded. "Find out." That was all she said. No drama, no assumptions, just direction. I went home and did exactly that. It took time, calls, a small fee, but eventually I got the answer. And when I saw the name, everything became clear. The company belonged to Renata's brother. I didn't react, not immediately, because sometimes the truth doesn't shock you, it settles into place. Quietly, of course it was him. Of course the money had a destination. Of course I had never been told. I sat there looking at the documents and understanding something painful. I hadn't just been excluded, I had been managed, carefully kept at a distance, given enough information to stay calm, but never enough to ask questions. Until now, I didn't call Trevor, not yet, because this conversation was not going to be emotional, it was going to be precise. So I did one more thing: I hired a bookkeeper, professional, neutral. I gave her everything. 2 weeks later, she came back with a report, 4 pages, and a look on her face I recognized instantly. The kind of look people have when they know the truth is going to hurt you. "It's consistent," she said quietly. "Regular payments, same account, same company." I nodded. "I know." She hesitated, then added one more thing. "The total is over $30,000. $30,000 from the clinic. From my investment, transferred quietly month after month." I closed the file slowly, because now there was nothing left to guess, only one thing left to do. I called Trevor. This time he answered. "Mom." His voice sounded normal. Too normal. "I'd like to come by the clinic," I said calmly. A pause, not long, but enough. "Sure," he said. "When?" "Tomorrow." Another pause. "Okay." I hung up. And for the first time since all of this began, I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, control. Because I wasn't going there as a mother, I was going there as someone who finally understood what had been happening behind her back, and more importantly, what needed to be said. They thought I didn't see. They thought I wouldn't question. They thought I would stay quiet. But the one thing they forgot was this: I may be a mother, but I am also a woman who understands numbers, and numbers never lie. I arrived at the clinic the next morning 10 minutes early, not because I was eager, because I wanted to see things clearly. The reception area was calm, clean, professional. Exactly the kind of place I had imagined when my son first told me about his dream. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel proud. Then I remembered why I was there. Trevor met me at the hallway. "Hi, Mom," he said. His voice was careful, measured, like he already knew this wasn't a casual visit. Renata was waiting inside the office, organized as always, papers arranged. Laptop open, prepared, good. So was I. We sat down, no small talk. No pretending. I placed a folder on the desk. "I'd like to go through a few things," I said calmly. Trevor glanced at Renata. She gave a small nod. And just like that, I understood something important. This wasn't the first time they had discussed me. I opened the folder. "Consulting fees," I said. Renata didn't flinch. "It was necessary during setup," she replied. I nodded. "I agree," I said, then I slid the next page forward. "This company," I continued, "belongs to your brother." This time there was a pause, not long but real. Trevor looked at her, confused. "I didn't know that," he said. Renata's expression tightened slightly. "You approved consulting," she replied. I approved support, Trevor said slowly. Not this. Silence filled the room, not loud but heavy, because this wasn't about numbers anymore. This was about trust. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't accuse, I simply continued. The total is over $30,000, I said. Trevor leaned back in his chair, processing, trying to connect the version of the business he believed in with the one sitting in front of him. Renata spoke again. It was temporary, she said. We needed help, I nodded. I understand that, I replied. Then I said the only thing that mattered, but I was never told. That sentence landed differently because it wasn't about money, it was about exclusion. About being removed from something I had built. Trevor looked at me, really looked this time, and I saw it, not defensiveness, realization. Why didn't you tell her? He asked quietly. Renata didn't answer immediately. And that silence said everything. I closed the folder. I'm not here to argue, I said calmly. I'm here to understand what kind of relationship we're going to have going forward. Neither of them spoke, so I made it simple. I need 3 things, I continued. Full written accounting, repayment plan for these payments. And from now on, I paused, any expense over $5,000 requires my approval. The room went completely still. Because for the first time, I was no longer asking. I was setting terms. Trevor nodded first. Okay, he said. Renata hesitated, then nodded as well. Okay. And just like that, everything shifted, not perfectly, not instantly. But clearly, 2 weeks later, I received the documents, every number accounted for, every payment listed, and a repayment plan. I read it carefully, then I signed it, not as a mother, as someone who had finally been acknowledged. Slowly, things began to change. Trevor started calling again, not every day, but honestly, he told me about the stress, the pressure, the disagreements he and Renata had been having about money. For the first time, he wasn't managing the conversation, he was sharing it. One evening in December, he invited me to the clinic, just the 3 of us, no patients, no staff, just quiet. We sat in the small kitchen eating takeout under a string of lights. Simple, but real. At one point, Trevor looked at me and said, "This place wouldn't exist without you." I nodded, because I knew what he meant, not just the money. Everything. I am not a woman who needs attention. I am not a woman who needs to be celebrated. But I am a woman who understands something very clearly. There is a difference between being appreciated and being included. And sometimes you don't realize which one you've lost until you're forced to ask the question. The right question, not emotional, not dramatic, just honest. And if there is one thing I learned from all of this, it's this. A contract is not a sign of mistrust. It is a sign of respect. It says, this matters enough to be clear. This relationship matters enough to be protected. And if you ever feel like you are being slowly removed from something you helped build, don't ignore it. Pay attention, because your feelings are not weakness. They are information. And if the people you trust are worth trusting, they will sit across from you even when it's uncomfortable, and they will choose to make things right. Because that is what family is supposed to do, not avoid the truth, but face it together.